Welcome to your most favorite channel, Heartbeat. This channel is mainly meant for MBBS students and medical professionals. My name is Dr. Amrit Kejriwal, and I am teaching mainly general medicine and applied medicine. As it is said, I learnt a lot from my teachers. I learnt a bit more from my colleagues, but the most I learned from my students. And I'm still learning, and I still consider myself to be a student of medicine. Today we'll learn food poisoning. Mainly we'll discuss the bacterial food poisoning. We'll discuss the etiology, diagnosis and management and a clinical approach. So it's usually a common outbreak, commonly seen in societies. Usually a group of people are affected. Individuals are affected, but that is relatively uncommon. Usually the various bacteria are involved. Other organisms, viruses, chemicals and vegetable poisoning have been also been implicated. The organisms and chemicals affect the intestine, causing malabsorption of nutrients and water. They usually present with nausea, vomiting, abdominal pain, loose motions, gastroenteritis, fever, headache, and fatigue. If it is not treated promptly, hypotension develops and it can lead to pre-renal failure and further complications. Patients have also died from inadequate treatment. Now coming to the two organisms, Staph aureus and Bacillus cereus. Both of them have an incubation period of less than 1 to 6 hours and it doesn't last for more than 12 hours. Coming to the Staphylococcus food poisoning, the source is mainly human carriers. There is a preformed toxin, that is toxin is present in the food before it is eaten. That is why there is a short incubation period in Staphylococcal food poisoning and Bacillus cereus poisoning. It usually occurs after warming and then rapid cooling. Diarrhea, nausea, vomiting and abdominal cramps are seen. Fever is uncommon, which is characteristic of staphylococcal food poisoning. Bacillus cereus. There are two forms of Bacillus cereus. One form is similar to Staphylococcus, that is got incubation period of 1 to 6 hours, and the second is of a longer incubation period, 8 to 16 hours. Type 1 is usually due to contaminated fried rice. So in this what happens, uncooked rice is present and in that it is already contaminated with Bacillus cereus spores, and this toxin is resistant or heat stable toxin and doesn't get destroyed by cooking. So uncooked rice, the bacteria toxin is formed and this is heat stable, so even if you cook, so the patient get the symptoms. And in the second type, you get a longer incubation period and diarrhea and abdominal cramps are usually present. Vomiting is unusual and this is a differentiating point from Staph aureus poisoning. Clostridium perfringens. Incubation period is 8 to 14 hours. Due to inadequately cooked meat, poultry or legumes, heat resistant spores are formed and these germinate and the patient has severe abdominal cramps and diarrhea. Vomiting and fever are rare in Clostridium perfringens poisoning. It is self-limiting, usually lasts than 24 hours. So here's the incubation period and is self-limiting, usually less than 24 hours. These are the other organisms which affect Vibrio, ETEC, Enterohemorrhagic E. coli, Salmonella, Campylobacter, Shigella, Vibrio parahemolyticus. They are having an incubation period of greater than 16 hours. So depending upon when the group of people come to you symptomatic, it may be easy to point out what is the food item or food items that have caused. We can get patients who have eaten from a common hotel or people who are residing in the hostel who get these symptoms. Now it is usually self-limiting or treated empirically. If you're suspecting cholera, then stool culture TCBS medium is required. If the patient has fever, then most probably Salmonella, Shigella or Campylobacter is present as a causative organism. If you're suspecting Clostridium difficile, then you do the toxin A and B in the stools. And if you're thinking of intestinal amoebiasis, then do the stool examination or rapid antigen assay. Treatment. Treatment is usually symptomatic. Usually patients just require oral hydration, and if the patient has mild symptoms, but still a history has to be taken. In the history you have to ask whether he's the only person, abdominal cramps, fever, vomiting, other people are affected or not. Do a stool examination and evaluation of the dehydration severity. Again, you can see for the sunken eyes and dry tongue. If the patient has watery diarrhea, that is no blood or in stools or fever, and 1 or 2 unformed stools per day, and no distressing abdominal symptoms, then we can give him oral fluids, rehydration solution, and this would usually suffice. If the patient has watery diarrhea, more than 1 to 2 unformed stools per day, and distressing enteric symptoms, then in such case you can give a loperamide 4 mg followed by 2 mg after passage of each unformed stool, not to exceed 8 tablets 16 mg per day, and drugs can be taken for 2 days. In selected cases, anterior bacterial drugs may be considered depending on the patient's symptoms. But remember, there should be no blood in stools and no fever. Loperamide is contraindicated if fever or dysentery is present. Dysentery, that is passage of bloody stools or fever greater than 37.8 degrees centigrade. In such patients, anterior bacterial drugs such as ciprofloxacin, levofloxacin, and azithromycin are useful. We can also use metronidazole. Prevention. Maintain the hygiene. This is the far most important part. Wash hands, utensils regularly. Fresh cooked vegetables. Don't keep leftovers. Avoid raw food. Even if you are taking raw food, then make sure that they're washed properly and thoroughly. Drink purified water and avoid ice. Ice may be from water from various sources, and that may be as a source of contamination. Educating food handlers is the most important part, especially whether in the hotels or in the hostels and residential complexes.